And drunken brawls, prostitutes, deviant hazing, behavior that would be frowned on even at a college frat party. But in this case, it was taking place at, of all places, look at those pictures and you won't believe it, the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, Afghanistan. These pictures are part of a new government report, and believe it or not, these are civilian security guards contracted by the State Department. Witnesses say it was like the Lord of the Flies. Guards actually peeing on each other, doing vodka shots off of body parts. Bottom line, the government says these guards didn't just violate codes of conduct, they put the embassy's security at risk. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is launching a full investigation, but the government report says her department should share some of the blame. It shows that the security firm's contract was recently extended through next year despite these allegations. There is a State Department briefing at 1 o'clock Eastern, and we expect there will be questions.
Here's the good news about the latest round of photos to surface of Americans in a war zone, photos that involve nudity, simulated sex, and other, frankly, totally inexplicable obscenity that appears to have no relation to what we thought America was doing in what we used to call the War on Terror. The good news about these images is that none of the nudity and simulated sex this time apparently is being forced on prisoners. The activity you see here also does not appear to be tied to a larger campaign of down the rabbit hole, voodoo science, interrogation, and torture, as were the last round of photos we saw remotely like these from the prison at Abu Ghraib. That's the good news about these photos. Also, the people you see pictured here are not members of the United States military. That is all good news. The bad news is that you and I have been and are still paying these guys in those photos $180 million a year to guard the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. Because apparently in some accounting somewhere, it turns out to be a genius idea to pay to have these guys guard the most important American building anywhere in the world outside of America, instead of having the U.S. Marines do it, which is how we used to guard our embassies when we were a normal country with a normal relationship to our normal military. The images you see here are of whack-and-hut contractors who have the current contract to guard the American embassy in Kabul. They are being paid by the U.S. State Department. 2 years ago, the State Department investigated this contract and found the company to be, quote, deficient. A follow-up Senate report on the contractors called them, quote, a case study of how mismanagement and lack of oversight can result in poor performance. But yet, earlier this summer, despite those findings, the whack-and-hut contract got re-upped. Now it's the Project on Government Oversight, the nonprofit watchdog group, that has written to the State Department and passed on these photos it says are from whack-and-hut whistleblowers. And this time, now that we've got photos of naked contractors in the capital of a country Americans are still fighting and dying in because we're supposedly helping them build national respect for the authority of government, now that we've got pictures of naked American contractors on the State Department payroll drinking vodka out of each other's butts, now apparently the State Department is really looking into whether this contract is still a good idea. Now they're really looking into it. The department spokesman today saying that diplomatic security investigators will be sent to the embassy in the next few days, and that the department's inspector general is also investigating. This latest controversy only underscoring the biggest picture concerns about this life during wartime, about what it is we are doing in Afghanistan and to what end. A new Congressional Research Service report finds that as of March of this year, contractors employed by the Defense Department outnumber our troops in Afghanistan. And that doesn't even count the contractors that work for the State Department and other agencies. Afghanistan is now host to, quote, the highest recorded percentage of contractors used by the Defense Department in any conflict in the history of the United States. And remember, when you think contractors, think these guys. Yeah, the majority of the people for whom we are footing the bill to be in Afghanistan are for-profit contractors. Meanwhile, a new CNN poll puts opposition to the war in Afghanistan at an all-time high in this country. 57% of Americans now say they are against it. Opposition among Beltway opinion makers is coming from all sides as well, with Liberal Senator Russ Feingold last week calling for a timetable to withdraw, and conservative commentator George Will this week following suit. In Washington, General Stanley McChrystal has submitted his long-awaited review of the war. It reportedly does not request more troops yet for Afghanistan, but it reportedly lays the groundwork for that request. President Obama is due to be reviewing that report over this coming Labor Day weekend. and 52,000 Americans in uniform in Afghanistan, now fighting in the deadliest environment for U.S. troops since we invaded 8 years ago.
The American embassy in Kabul, Afghanistan. In August, the target of rocket attacks and suicide bombings. Now, allegations that the contractor hired by the State Department to protect that embassy for years has created conditions that threaten its security. The report by the Independent Project on Government Oversight, or POGO, cites complaints from nearly 10% of the guards working for the ArmorGroup North America, now owned by Wackenhut Services, Inc. The most explosive, charges of what POGO calls deviant hazing and humiliation. POGO says it obtained these photos showing superiors and other guards off-duty hazing some new recruits, including images of half-naked men in compromising sexual positions with what appears to be alcohol, all highly offensive in a Muslim country. Guards who objected, they say, were ridiculed, demoted, and even fired. CNN communicated with one guard who confirmed the authenticity of the photos.
The impact for the job, though, is this total breakdown in the chain of command, a total lack of respect on the part of the guard force for their supervisors because of this kind of behavior.
POGO also says other problems undermine morale, including hiring an insufficient number of guards. The ones on duty were sleep-deprived, lacked proper training and adequate armored vehicles. There was constant personnel turnover. Nearly two-thirds of the guards, they say, couldn't adequately speak English. And it charges Afghan nationals working for the embassy were mistreated. It's just the latest in a long history of complaints against the company that started under the Bush administration.
The Secretary and the Department have made it clear that we will have zero tolerance of the type of conduct that is alleged in these documents.
For the past 2 years, the State Department repeatedly criticized the company for its poor performance. In this letter from June 2007, it warned the security of the U.S. Embassy in Kabul is in jeopardy. Yet in July, the Obama administration renewed the contract for another year with the option to extend until 2012.
They said, you know, we are now convinced everything's fine, and then they reissued the contract for another year. So I think the State Department is an equal partner in the problem here.
A Senate subcommittee criticized the State Department for publicly defending the company, calling the department's handling of the contractor a case study of how mismanagement and lack of oversight can result in poor performance. At times, the security of the U.S. Embassy in Kabul may have been placed at risk. The head of that subcommittee, Senator Claire McCaskill, says the State Department's testimony appears to be misleading at best, and she is demanding all relevant documents. The State Department, meanwhile, says its Inspector General has launched an investigation. CNN has contacted that contractor, Wackenhut Services, Inc., but so far they have not responded to those allegations. Jill Doherty, CNN.
Out of Afghanistan, a shocking report of booze, brawls, and prostitutes at a compound for private U.S. embassy guards, these contractors that David are talking about. The evidence is undeniable. Photos of drunken, naked contractors partying in what one watchdog group called a Lord of the Flies environment. Declaring, quote, zero tolerance for the behavior, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton today ordered a wide-ranging investigation into ArmorGroup, which is the private company responsible for U.S. embassy security. Tom Foreman takes us up close.
In a summer of growing attacks near the Kabul embassy and growing fatalities among American troops, these pictures. Private embassy security guards holding what appear to be wild, half-naked drinking parties while away from the embassy and off-duty. Hugely inflammatory in a Muslim country. The independent watchdog group Project on Government Oversight, or POGO for short, says the photos came from guards who say supervisors pressured others to join in.
And then if they don't engage, they sort of hold it against them, which is ripping apart the fabric of the whole chain of command.
The guards surrounding the embassy are employed by ArmorGroup, owned by Wackenhut Services, under a $190 million State Department contract, which has been under fire.
That at times, the security of the U.S. Embassy in Kabul may have been placed at risk.
At a hearing in June, Senator Claire McCaskill brought up a laundry list of concerns, and that watchdog group, POGO, is now adding more. foreign guards who speak so little English they cannot understand their bosses, acute understaffing causing massive turnover, and missing guards. One inspection this spring found 18 absent from their post. The State Department said in June it was working on the problem, and
at no time was the security of American personnel at the U.S. Embassy compromised.
But Pogo says these pictures were taken just last month, so a State Department delegation will soon head over to investigate.
To be clear, there were some things going on in Kabul which we were not aware of, but frankly, we should have been aware of them.
At this point, however, that may not be enough. Senator McCaskill clearly wants full disclosure, wants to know why the State Department defended Wackenhut in front of her committee despite all these problems. CNN has reached out to Wackenhut officials asking them to explain these photos. So far, they have not.